Hi, everybody. Welcome to the broadcast. I'm Stephen Diamond, the founder of Life Skills Masterclass. We're so happy that you've joined us, and we are so glad that people from all over the world are watching on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on so many different platforms all over the world. We're happy to have you. Tonight, we have a very special guest, one of our group members, who's going to talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges that she's having in her own personal life. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that are going to relate to her story. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the purpose of this broadcast. So this is mainly broadcasting inside of my Facebook group. I have a private Facebook group for people who are struggling in their lives, and they just need that encouragement. They need to know where to go, how to get there, and they want more information about the tools that they can use in their lives to end the suffering. A little bit about me. I struggled with stress, anxiety, and depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, and I'm dyslexic. I've been on all the drugs and medication. I've done it all. And I figured a few things out along the way. After 25 years of therapy, I suddenly realized that I had created a series of coping mechanisms that if other people knew this information, it could literally change their life. And so I embarked 15 years ago on a journey to create a course that would instill those particular skills in people so that they could affect the changes in their lives that would improve life not only for them, but for their families and everyone around them. And the purpose of this broadcast every Thursday night inside of my Facebook group is really to bring us all together. And I want to show the people who are watching that we are more alike than we are different. You know, you might not realize this, but scientists tell me that we share 99% of our DNA. It's less than 1% that differentiates us as individuals. So stop and think about that just for a second. Less than 1%. Otherwise, we're all basically the same. So though our journey through life might be unique for each and every one of us, the process of being a human is the same. And that means that the way we heal our trauma and our emotional trauma is the same. So I'd like to get started tonight by walking you through a quick little diagram I have that will show you how we all process information. And the very first thing I want to show you is that there are basically 4 different zones that people live in, let's say. And you can move from one zone to the next over time. The very first comfort zone that you see there in the green, that's your feel safe comfort zone. That's the place where I would say probably 95% of the population lives and gets stuck in. And a lot of times we don't realize this. We don't realize that we get stuck inside of this comfort zone. But we get a job that makes us just enough money to pay the bills. We settle in with a family, we get married, we have children, and everything kind of gets comfortable and you figure out everything. And then you get into this place, this rut, where you just at some point realize that you're stuck in a hamster wheel going around and around and around, and you really can't get out of it. And so I struggle all the time to convey the message to people that it's not that you're stuck, it's that you don't know where the door is that leads to the next level. And that would be the fear zone. Now, once you leave your comfort zone, you become very scared of new things, new information. You become kind of paralyzed by fear because you're afraid of the unknown. So it's in this fear zone that you start blaming others for your failure, and you find excuses, and you care what others think. And I have a great slide that I like to show people And it says, don't compare yourself to others. Stop caring about how people perceive you. Surround yourself with positive people. Because if you want to make a really great change in your life, the greatest thing that you can do is do an analysis of the people who are the closest to you in your inner circle. When you find out who those people are and you start looking at their core values and their belief systems, that's going to give you a roadmap of exactly where you are headed. So it's in that fear zone that I like to take people and do what I call a friendship audit, where we just audit all of those that are the closest people to you so that you know what kind of influences are coming to you. Because it's their thoughts, their words, their actions that are subconsciously influencing you every single day. And people who are caught up in stress and anxiety and depression, we don't think about these things. We don't realize how important the group that surrounds us really truly is. So it's a very important thing to do, that friendship analysis, just to see where the influence is coming from. I'll give you another example. I know a lot of you watching right now, the very first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is what? You pick up your phone and you start reading messages, or you doom scroll through the news or on Facebook. So what's really happening to you is that within the first few minutes that your brain is consciously awake, you are already influencing your day by what you see and what you allow inside of your mind. Think about it. So how powerful is it for us to eliminate all of that negativity in the first few hours of our day? Because that really sets the tone, and it's a negative tone. When you grab your phone and you start doom scrolling, 90% of what you see is going to be negative. And the reason for that is our social media powers at be have learned how to monetize hate, because negativity sells. It's sexy. It gets our attention. It makes us want to know more. And that means dollars to the people on the other side of that. So don't give them the opportunity to influence you first thing in the morning. So that's that fear zone. Once you break free of the fear zone, you then begin to enter what I call the learning zone. And that's where you begin to clear out some of the old way of thinking that no longer serves you. And you create positive empty space for new information that will. And this is really, really important. I think it's probably one of the most important things that you can focus on when you're out of the fear zone. Once you've left the fear zone, when you go into a learning phase where you're ready to accept new information, where you're ready to take positive suggestions, that's when real change begins to happen. And the last zone is what I tongue-in-cheek call the Life Skills Masterclass zone. And that is where you now have the skills, because of the new information that you've learned, you now have the skills to set goals the right way. Not goals that you're not going to be able to achieve, but achievable goals. And that's really important, you know? And then you'll be able to determine which habits no longer serve you and which habits you want to focus on to develop because they bring positivity and good things to your life. What are those habits? Have you ever sat down and done an audit of your own personal habits? And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a minute. And then in that zone also, you're creating your perfect routines. You're figuring out what works for you and what doesn't. You're eliminating anything that no longer serves you. and you're building a new routine that is going to produce different results in your life. And when you create that routine of positivity and the good things that are serving you, you then find that new things begin to come to you, new opportunities begin to show themselves, and your world begins to change. And I think it's really, really important for people to understand this process. And so you get new results when you go through that. So how do you break down what works for you and what doesn't? Well, I'm going to show you how I do it with my coaching clients. Now, I don't normally reveal this, but I think that it's important here because I really wanted to give you something of real value tonight that you could use. And so I'm going to show you, this is what I call my emotional survey. And I'm going to go back to the full screen so everybody can see this. Okay, so this is my emotional survey. It's a 2-page, I call it crisis sheet. So whenever I'm coaching someone and they call me and they're in complete crisis, oh my God, my world is falling apart, I don't know what to do, I always tell them to go get their survey. And let's do it. And so let me show you the process. It's real simple. So we start out by talking about the psychodrama of the moment. So here in this section, I just want you to write 1 or 2 sentences of what is going on. Just give me no emotion. Just give me the facts, the description of what is going on inside of your head. That will give you the beginning of a roadmap that you're going to see how you can come to the conclusion of what's working and what's not in your life. The next section is, how do I feel about it? So you're asking yourself, how do I feel about this? This chaos, this psychodrama right here, how do I feel about it? Stop and just bring yourself to center for a moment and just think about how it makes you feel. Have you been triggered? If so, what has triggered you? And this is the section you want to put this in. And I gave you some helpful hints. I'll put a link to this in the Facebook group. So angry, scared, joyful, sad, cynical, powerless, persecuted, numb. These are all statements that my coaching clients have made to me over the years. These are real feelings that people feel. So how is all of this chaos, how is it making you feel? And then what are the feelings, the emotions that you're attaching to it? And then the next thing we do is, how do I really feel? Now, this is really important, and it might sound counterintuitive because of what's up here. But what I like to do here is dig a little deeper. I want to know what is really deeply inside of you that's truly, truly bothering you, that just won't allow your brain to rest. That's what we're going to put in, how do you really feel? And then I have some more triggers down here. So relieved, depressed, stressed, alienated, excited, envious, ashamed. So these are feelings which you may associate with, how do you really feel? And then on the second page, we have at the top, this problem likely stems from, and I have a whole bunch of options here: mother, father, spouse, children, other people, me, sex, no sex, children, original sin, early weaning, boundary issues, brain chemistry, basic unlovability, bad luck, other. You see what I'm doing? I'm helping you create a roadmap to find the peace by first figuring out what the real problem is. So then we go down to this section, and this is my favorite because I have 6 lines here. On one side, we're going to put the relevant present influences. What are the 3 top influences in your life? And then on this side, we're going to put the relevant past issues. And then what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line from this one to whichever one of these it aligns with. And that's going to show you the beginning of where your emotional instability comes from. Once we know what's really going on deep down inside of you, then we have the ability to create a strategy to overcome it. Do you see? And finally, what does it all mean? So this is a synopsis of what it all means to you. Okay? And there's no right or wrong answers on any of this. And then finally at the bottom, what's the breakthrough? What is the breakthrough? What is that one piece of information that you learned that just changes everything, that gives you a new thought process, that gives you a new direction, that gives you the ability to think thoughts that you haven't thought in the past? It's only once we begin to process information in a different way that we will see new and different results in our life show up. And that is critical if you want to change. I'm a trauma release expert, and I can help you. If you are dealing with some unprocessed trauma and you're stuck and you don't know what to do, reach out to me. I would be happy to help. You know, I want to show you our brand new ad. We have a brand new ad campaign that's going out all over the internet right now that is designed to pull more people into my Facebook group. And I want to thank everyone who's watching right now and participating. You're so important and we really appreciate it. So let's check out the brand new ad that I have. I'm so excited for you to see it. This is the first world premiere, really. First time anyone has seen this. And I hope you enjoy it. And we're going to be right back right after this with Colette, who's going to talk to us about her journey with stress and anxiety.
I often felt helpless and alone, not understanding it was my anxiety and my stress. I used to live that way until I took Stephen Diamond's step-by-step anxiety and stress management course. I was in a constant state of stress and anxiety, not realizing the damage I was causing to my wife and kids, and learn how to identify and manage the root cause of that stress and anxiety. It was hard to face it at first, but my family and I couldn't be more happy with the life we got back. Please don't continue to suffer in silence. Take the first step towards a brighter future today.
Yay! I love it. So happy. That's a real person struggling with stress and anxiety. And just by learning some simple techniques, his world has changed and his family is happier. So let's talk to a real person, someone who is struggling just like everybody else out there. And let's really dig in and find out what's going on with my friend here, Colette. I'm going to bring her up right now. Let's see. There she is. Hi, Colette. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's great to see you. Thank you for being a loyal member of our Facebook group. Tell me a little bit, Colette, about you and your situation.
Well, let's see here. If you will, I was diagnosed with a depression at the age of 15. However, I truly had it way before that. It just was never really brought out.
That's normal, by the way. And did you
Yes.
know that the average person sees 8 therapists before they're correctly diagnosed?
I believe it. I believe it. I went into my first inpatient treatment center when I was 16 for several different things. You know, I started drinking a lot already at the age of 12.
For a second, tell me why you started drinking. What was it?
Well, to be honest with you, my stepdad was an alcoholic and he didn't like drinking alone. And so he would let us kids and all the neighbor kids drink.
Right.
And I was a very shy person. And I found that the alcohol gave me the ability to be somebody I wanted to be, but couldn't be without it.
That good old liquid courage.
Yep. And so I,
What did it actually do for you, Colette?
in the end, it made me so much more depressed. It made me honestly a little bit paranoid, because when I wasn't drinking, do people still like me? Because I was the life of the party when I was drinking. And then I had to, drink before I went to school. I had to, just to make sure I could keep up that persona that I was somebody fun and I was somebody important.
So would you say that you had, in some form or fashion, attached your identity as Colette to the alcohol because in some way you felt that if you didn't have that drink, you couldn't be the authentic Colette that everyone knew? Would you say that that's accurate?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see the lesson there?
Oh, for sure. And it was so easy because my stepdad bought it for us and let us do it. So it's not like I had to hide it or anything.
It was always right there, just an
Yeah.
arm's reach away.
Yeah. So
And how did that affect your adolescence? So at 16, 17, 18, you're really just coming into your own as a human being. Talk to me a little bit about the damage that you think that did today.
I mean, I can look back now and see the damage. At the time, I thought it was the most amazing thing in the world. Look at me. I can drink freely. All my friends, oh, that's so cool. I missed out on a lot, but at the same time, I also feel, and it sounds strange, that it helped me. Because
all the time, I hear it all the time from other people dealing with alcohol and drugs.
I think partially too, because I suffer PTSD, childhood trauma from my mother, from basically the time I was born. And so, the alcohol also helped in that aspect of dealing with it.
What did the alcohol do for you? Did it numb you emotionally so that
Oh,
you could
yes.
make use?
Yeah. It numbed me emotionally from the past, but it then brought new troubles to the present.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you're becoming a young woman. You're in your 20s. Talk to me a little bit about what happened then.
Well, once I was in my 20s, then basically, like I was saying, though, when I was 16, I went into my first inpatient, for the alcohol, depression, suicide. And
were you resistant to that treatment? Were you not happy about it? Unwilling?
I wasn't. The funny thing is I went to a doctor's appointment for an ear infection. And granted, this is like 36 years ago.
Right.
Where
different
time.
Stuff
wasn't really talked about a lot or whatever.
Right.
And the doctor just started asking me questions, like in regards to depression. And then he got to suicide. And he asked me, are you suicidal? Have you ever attempted this, that, or the other? And I said yes to both. And little did I know that would land me right in a treatment center without just cause, And I was...
The same thing happened to me, Colette. I was in a therapy session with a therapist. And the therapist asked me if I was suicidal. And I said, hell yes, I'm suicidal.
Right.
And the next thing I knew, there was an ambulance
Mhm.
to technicians coming in the door with a stretcher to get me.
Yes, yes. And I didn't know that at the time. And
I
to
didn't.
be honest with you, I was so upset because I had this huge party planned for the weekend. And I'm just like, I can't miss this party. but so yeah, they brought me to the treatment center for 6 weeks, and that's where I had my first panic attack. They gave me the
You
highest.
didn't have your first panic attack until you were in the hospital?
Right. When I was 16, what happened is they gave me the highest dose of whatever antidepressant I was on at the time.
Right.
And I was flying. And I stood up, and you know how when you stand up, you get that, like I had a dizzy feeling. Well, this one
Right.
wasn't going away.
Right.
And that caused my first panic attack. And it just went downhill from there.
So you and I have a lot in common because I have shared that exact same experience when the difference was you went willing and I didn't. I was cussing and screaming, kicking and fighting the whole way when I was forced to go into inpatient treatment. I was held under a 5150, which is a judge order that gives them 72 hours to hold me to evaluate me.
Mm-hmm.
What a lot of people don't realize is mental hospitals, they do very, very little rehabilitation. What they really do is they evaluate, monitor, and medicate.
Yes.
And that's really it. And all they do is fill out paperwork and pass that paperwork on to the next person, and you just go down the process. When I was on the inside, I figured out that they had a point system. Every day I would watch the nurses on this big whiteboard behind the main counter. I would watch the nurses go and change the scores by everybody's name. And it was just room numbers. It wasn't people's names. But I couldn't understand what it was. So I watched it until I figured out what the scoring system was. Because I noticed that when people got a certain score, they disappeared from the floor. So I figured out how to game the system. And within 4 days, I was out.
Yeah. No. And I understand that too, because I learned how to do that too, if you will. I got really good at manipulating and to getting out of stuff. So yeah, I understand.
Those are skills that you develop because when you are in that mentality, it really is a crisis way of thinking. When your brain is in crisis, it's going to look for the lowest hanging fruit to pick from. It's going to find what's easiest. And if what is easiest is to manipulate all of those people around you or manipulate the system that you're in or whatever the case may be, that's what you're going to do if your brain feels that it's going to get you even one step closer to what it is you want, which at that moment I would probably say was alcohol. Is that really what was true for you?
You know, honestly, after the panic attack, I didn't really drink anymore because now I had a new fear. I had a fear of death. I got health anxiety. I didn't like to not feel in control anymore because of that panic attack. And a lot of times when I drank, I wasn't in control. And so I didn't drink anymore. So in a way, I look at it as the panic attack saved my life, because if I would have continued drinking, I can honestly say I'd probably be dead right now. But it just added a new issue to it.
Now, do you understand the psychological mechanism that was at work there? I'll explain it to you very quickly. When you went into the inpatient program for alcohol abuse, suicide, and all of that, alcohol was your main crutch at that time. When you go inside, your brain becomes overwhelmed by the situation, and it realizes that it's lost control. So now the next thing that it does is it begins searching for a new scenario in which it can control. Hence the panic attack.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. I don't like it, but it does.
No one likes it. It's a horrible way to live.
Yes.
But I lived like that for decades of my life before I suddenly realized that I didn't. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who are watching this broadcast right now. Somebody out there is watching this right now with a drink in their hand.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there listening to this and they're going, oh my gosh, that sounds like me.
Right.
That's why I'm doing this broadcast, because I want people to understand that we're not as different as you think. We are all creatures cut from the same cloth. And I will tell you that no matter what is going on in your life, no matter how crazy of a situation, I work with war vets. I work with people who are suffering PTSD because half of their body has been blown off. I've worked with rape victims. I've worked with every kind of trauma that you can think of. And in all of those cases, I always find that when you show people that there is a new option for them to work towards, it opens up a plethora of new opportunities that even just seconds before you were closed off to and didn't even know they were there, just because you were willing to shift the way that you think on the inside. It's that internal shift inside of us, that willingness to create new space that we can then fill with positive information. That is what creates change in our lives. Because when we're struggling with a crisis, that crisis will never change in our life until the pain it causes no longer serves us. And when the pain becomes too heavy and too great for us to bear, that is the moment in which change will occur. So continue with your story and tell me where you went to next.
So next, I graduated high school at the age of 18 with no job, nothing I had nothing going for me. And
were you living in a city or a rural area?
I lived in a very tiny town here in the state of Minnesota.
Okay.
So
very isolated, would you say?
Oh, yes.
Not
yes.
A lot of resources, not a lot of programs or anything like that?
No, not at all. And so my panic attacks and anxiety turned into agoraphobia. I did not leave my house for a year. I feared everything. I feared taking a shower. I feared eating because I might choke. I feared life. I just never left the house. The shower part came because when I was 16, my stepdad ended up passing away, and he had a heart attack in the bathtub. And I had to help my mom with that situation. And so a lot of stuff stemmed from that too. So for like a year, it turned into agoraphobia, and
it usually does.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with me. I still struggle with agoraphobia.
Mm-hmm.
It's something even today. People ask me, I get on stage in front of thousands of people all the time and give keynote speeches and stuff like that. I do corporate trainings and things like that about stress in the workplace. And people ask me, well, how it doesn't make sense that you have agoraphobia, but yet you can stand on the stage. Well, when I'm working, that's one brain. But when I'm myself, when I'm at home alone, that's a different part of my brain that I'm using. And I'm terrified of small situations, especially like small intimate gatherings where I'm with a group of people that I don't know.
Yes.
That's very difficult for me even today.
Yeah.
I'm 54 years old. I've performed in over 100 countries around the world. I've done over 10,000 live shows in my lifetime, but I still struggle with leaving the house sometime. Isn't that crazy?
It really is. And, it's funny you say that, because I was just going to bring up the fact that, how throughout the time, once I finally just said enough is enough, and when I was 20, checked myself back into an inpatient, wanting to have some kind of life. And slowly, once I got out of there, I did, but it comes and goes. It's like there's moments, could be a year, could be weeks, could be hours, moments where I am present and I'm not in my head. Like, are you going to crash? Are you going to have a panic attack? What's going to happen to you? What's going to happen to you? Oh, you better not do this,
I call that living in the lands of shoulds. I tell people in
I'm
my
a big shoulder.
Yeah, I tell people, put should on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Any statement that begins with if, what if,
Mm-hmm.
or I should have, or I could have, those are lies that we convince ourselves are true.
Yep.
I have a Facebook comment I want to put up here. This is one of our Facebook users, one of our group members. And they say, I think it really needs specific questions about if you're actually intentional on death or dying versus just questions regarding suicidal thoughts. Yeah, it's normal. When it does cross the line, it's a challenge. You really need to find a safe space regarding suicidal thoughts just to discuss basic depression symptoms versus intentions. That's a great point. Thank you for sharing that, whoever posted that. That's a really good point. What they're saying there is that you need that safe place that you can go to, that support system, which really is why I created this Facebook group, because everyone needs, and not everyone has, a support system. And we all need that place that we can go to that is unbiased, that's non-judgmental, that we can express ourselves in an honest, deep-seated way that will foster a community to gather around us and just help us through that moment. Because most of life's problems are made up of little moments. They don't last forever. But when you're an emotionally sensitive person like I am, and like I'm sure you are too, Colette,
yes,
it kind of overwhelms our thinking. And we have this problem of trying to find our way back to center again. And I think that's something that's really important. You were going to say?
Very true. And I'm not just emotionally sensitive to myself. I tend to take on everybody else's emotions, whether I know them or not. And whether it be sometimes I feel like it's kind of a way for me to not have to feel my own.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I feel like it's just me. It's just who I am, because I have been through so much. And so I can feel for other people and understand and relate that I tend to take it on. I think it's a mixture of both, though.
Do you find that because you have been beaten so hard by life in the past, as most of us have, by the way, and do you feel that sometimes you find your brain is pulling you back to the old Colette?
Oh, all the time, daily. I feel like daily I fight it. Sometimes it wins.
Tell me about that. What do you do, and how do you become aware of it when it's happening?
Sometimes it takes me a while. It could take me a day to realize it's happening. Sometimes it could take me a few minutes. I tend to, throughout all the inpatients and outpatients and therapy I've gone through, I've taken from those different things that I found that help me. And one of the things that I like to do is I once I recognize it, I like to be like, okay, you're going back to here, you're going back to these thoughts. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes to focus on those thoughts, to feel those thoughts, to know those thoughts. And then it's time to move on and be back in the present.
Let's talk about that for a second. That is so incredible. I'm so happy to hear you say that. And I know that that comes from your therapy that you had, because it is a part of, it's a cognitive behavioral therapy skill.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But a lot of us are afraid to experience our emotions.
Mm.
It terrifies us.
Oh, yes.
What I like to call marinate in that for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I tell my coaching clients all the time, just stop. Just stop with your thoughts. Stop with everything that we're doing and just sit. Just marinate in that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
They might be crying their eyes out. They might be having a full-blown panic attack.
Yep.
But the lesson that I want them to understand is that feelings do not kill you.
And that is so true. And it took me a long time. I learned that technique years and years and years ago. And I had tried it once, had a panic attack because the thoughts, the memories, the triggers that were set off were like, no, shove it again, shove it. I'm not feeling that. It's not happening. I'm going to just sit here in this self-pity wallow, whatever.
Because if you feel that those feelings again, you instantly go back to fear,
mm-hmm.
and then the fear triggers you, and then that agoraphobia comes up, and you're like, nope, not going to deal with it.
Yeah.
Not today, Satan.
It's just way too overwhelming. Way too overwhelming.
But
yeah,
what happens in your brain when you bring yourself back to center and you train yourself, this is a practice. It's like a muscle. You know, when you're working out in the gym, you start with a weak muscle like I have, and then you keep training and training and training, and eventually your muscles become really big. And it's only through that dedication of exercise over a period of time that you achieve the result that you desire.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is true with this. It's only once you learn the key skill of bringing yourself back to center whenever the chaos begins to swirl.
Yeah.
And then allowing yourself to just marinate in that feeling, in that chaos. Because what you're doing is you're training the new neural net pathway that you're building in your brain. You're literally rewiring your brain to understand that these feelings do not control you, that you are in control, and that these feelings are not going to determine what happens next.
Right. Yep, exactly. And so that's what I have been doing. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't always work.
No.
There's honestly some times that I recognize it and I see it, and I'm just in that poo-poo mood where it's just like, I'm just going to let them overtake me. I don't have the strength. I don't have, the time. I don't want to. I'm going to slip back into it because for whatever reason,
Here's another great comment that I wanna show, and it says, a lot of people start therapy, relieve trauma, and end up back in the hospital for the triggered emotions that they haven't experienced in a long time. Bother therapy. I highly encourage PHP or coping skills, trauma and balance before starting therapy. Well, yes, that's kind of what I'm all about. Is I think therapy is great. I've had a lot of it.
Yeah.
I've had at this point, I think I lost count, 37 different therapists in my life. One who is in prison for sexually abusing their clients,
Yeah.
who also hit on me. I'm not the one that put him in prison, but it did happen. So there are bad therapists out there, and not all therapists are good. I have a whole podcast, by the way, on Spotify. My podcast, What the Tigers Taught Me. There's a whole episode on how to choose the right therapist for you. So if that's something that interests you, please check out that podcast. It'll give you great amount of information on exactly how to choose the right therapist for you. Most therapists don't care, and most therapists are clock watchers. And I know I'm going to get a lot of crap from therapists for saying that, but I don't care, because it's the truth. I have the experience. I have sat with therapist after therapist after therapist with a clock right behind my head, and all they do is just keep looking up at the clock every 10 minutes to see when it hits 50 so that they can wrap up the last 10 minutes and schedule your next appointment. Those are the kind of therapists that have no real value in this world. They're just check collectors. And those are the ones you should weed out. I've developed a system for weeding those out, and I talk about it in my podcast. So check that out. And so tell me what your experience has been with the therapists that you have been with.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I've had similar experiences. I've gone through quite a few, and it's really hard when you have to pay for it, because you want to go in and just make sure it's, somebody that's going to work for you, and they don't. But I've fired, if you will, a handful of them after just a couple of sessions, because I know me, and I know what I'm looking for and what I connect with. And if I'm not feeling that, then I'm not sticking with it,
Absolutely. Why should you?
Right.
Why would you?
Exactly.
What's the purpose of staying? First of all, if you don't like your therapist, let's just start there. If you don't like your therapist and your therapist's core values don't align with yours, then you're wasting your time and your money. Get up and leave.
Right. Agreed.
And
Agreed.
That is my advice across the board. Therapists really annoy me. And I'm not a big proponent of therapists. And the reason is, first of all, a lot of them have these complexes and these egos, and they think that, they're always right, and they're not. Some of the most effed up people I've ever met in my life were therapists. And so they have their own issues. But every once in a while, and it's through a process of elimination, that you will find that one that truly cares. Here in Las Vegas, I live in Las Vegas, and I'd gone through so many therapists that just didn't care, and I could tell they didn't care. I'm a really smart guy. And I was like, I'm just not getting anything. And I kept switching therapists, and eventually I got assigned to this guy who had a really crazy name. His name was Antioco. I had never heard that before, and I thought it was funny. And this man changed my life.
Yeah.
He really cared about me. He really took an interest in me and my well-being. He would pick up the phone sometimes and just randomly call me and say, "Hey, how are you? Are you okay? What's going on?" And this man made the difference in my life. And he made me realize that the world wasn't full of hateful people. And the world wasn't full of evil people that just wanted to take. There was someone out there that was willing to listen, absorb, help me process, and move forward in my life with nothing but the best intentions. And you may all be very shocked to find out that is the therapist who put me in 5-point restraints in a mental hospital.
You know what? Good for him, though. He obviously knew something,
He did. And I am extremely grateful for him, and I love him dearly, because without that experience, the truth is I wouldn't be who I am today.
Yes.
And so it all grows. What is the number one skill or the number one tool that therapy has taught you, Colette?
Honestly, to not that I do it all the time, but to believe in myself, and trust in my own gut and my own thoughts.
Right.
I think because I finally realized after going to therapy, and it wasn't even so much the therapist itself, but it was me being like, okay, why do I keep seeing all these therapists? I don't feel like they're doing anything for me. And then I realized, on about 4 years ago, I went into inpatient again. And it was a horrific experience. Nothing like I had remembered in the past.
What was the difference?
Well, and I can't blame it on COVID, but it was right when COVID started. The difference was, I think, me. I had certain expectations, and they weren't getting met by the facility, by what was going on. And it hit me right then and there. I was expecting to go in there and have some miracle cure for them to tell me what to do, how to live my life, to tell me, how I'm supposed to make this all go away and be better. And it finally
You thought that you were going to take your car into the garage and the mechanic was going to come out and fix it.
Right, I did. I really, truly did. And then I got in there, and it was nothing like that. And it finally hit me that they're just regular people like me. I'm the only one that can actually make the change.
There it is.
Yes.
There it is.
I'm like, yes, they can maybe guide me a little bit, or, be there for me. But I am truly, I let go of that ego, if you will, a little bit, and was like, yeah.
Colette, you learned the greatest lesson that any of us could ever learn in our lives, and that is change only happens through us.
I know, and it took me like 40 something years to figure that out, multiple therapy, all this other stuff, but it finally hit me.
So let's talk about your coping skills today. Tell me a little bit about some of the things that you do today to handle the stress and anxiety that's going on in your life.
Well, today it's difficult. It's really difficult in Minnesota. By the time February comes, the winters here are awful. By February, every winter, it gets harder to cope without the sun,
Can you elaborate a little bit? You said without the sun. So talk to me a little bit about that. There's probably a lot of snow, so you're stuck in the house a lot.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yes.
So all of that contributes to depression.
Yes. I am an outdoor Mother Earth nature person. And so not being able to be outside, because I am actually allergic to the cold, so I can't really be outside in the winter. It takes a toll on me. The agoraphobia comes back because I am stuck on here, and then my mind starts to recycling. Okay, this is your safe place. This is your safe place. You can't leave. And so, unfortunately, every winter I go through it. What I do to try and get over it, I do try to just, because I still live in a very, very small town of under 500 people.
Right.
Get to the closest little town, maybe just walk around the grocery store, once a week, or do some volunteering, because I also work from home. So
that's great. But you have strategies in place.
Yes, I try to do
Yeah,
little
you're not
things.
allowing yourself to be blown by the wind in whichever direction it chooses.
Right, right. Yep. And
The most important thing that I can tell people who are watching this is that I don't care whether it's alcohol, I don't care whether it's drugs, whether it's a sexual addiction, whether addiction is addiction is addiction. It doesn't matter what you're addicted to. You can be addicted to work. My father was a workaholic. I am a workaholic. So there's all of these kind of, oops, I'm getting a feedback from someone. Hang on just one second. That's very strange. I'm hearing a feedback from my own microphone. But anyway, I think it's important for us to all realize that we have a responsibility to ourselves to do what I call self-care. And that is to monitor the negative influences that are coming into us and take time to nurture ourselves. You know, I grew up with a mother who constantly told me that it would have just been better for everyone involved if she had had that abortion. And she told me that on multiple occasions throughout my life. I had a very abusive mother. She was a religious fanatic. She was a evangelical white Christian conservative that was radicalized. And so, but yet she would beat me to a pulp sometimes, to the point to where once my sister had to pull her off of me to just save my life. And so that's the kind of childhood that I grew up in. And a lot of you who have seen my story on Netflix know that I grew up doing magic, touring around the world as a magician. I was a child prodigy. Well, my magic happened as a result of me looking for a way to get away from my mother. So I found a way to get away from her, and it saved my life. But it also created a whole new host of other issues that I needed to deal with. So what I want to leave everyone with today is that there are three parts to this equation. First is figuring out what is causing your chaos. The second is developing the skills and the tools and the knowledge that will lead you to better habits, better resources, better ways of processing information and thinking. And the third part of that is self-care. You really need to nurture yourself. We may not have gotten the nurturing that we needed at home when we were younger, and that's okay because we don't live in the past. We live in the present. What happened back then is over. It's done. It can never hurt you again. Now, unprocessed trauma is a very real thing, and it takes a lot of time to process real deep trauma. And some people never get through it. But the ones that do are the ones that dedicate themselves every single day to self-care, to doing whatever you can to just be 1% better than you were yesterday. And if you can't do 1%, do 0.5%. And if you can't do 0.5%, do 0.25%. But just make the effort to get a little bit better, whether that's reading a new book or participating in a live streaming broadcast like this, or commenting inside the Facebook group. I want to bring all of us together, and I want to create a support community that all of us share in, that all of us can go to when in that time of help, and know that they can lay out their problem in the Facebook group, and they're going to be loving, caring people that are going to run to them and say, I'm here to talk to you. Because sometimes that's all we need, is just that person that will listen to us, that person that will give us some constructive feedback. So listen, Colette, I have to wrap things up, but I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for having the courage to share a part of your life. And I know there's so many people out there that you've helped tonight, so many people that will relate to your story. Love to have you on again. Please come back and participate another time with us. And I'll let you close things out. Is there any advice you would like to give someone who might be watching that's in your position where you used to be?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I really want for others is the little things matter. It's not enough that showering, brushing your teeth, just the little self-care things are such a huge task that, and it's okay, but when we do it, take that one little thing as a victory. It's huge. You may think of it as, well, everybody does this every day, so it's not a big deal. Why should I celebrate it? Because it is important and it is a big deal to us. It's a huge deal. And the next day, do both, shower and brush your teeth. And it brings that confidence and that level of, oh my gosh, I can do this. I can have this control in my life. It's huge. Just celebrate every little victory.
It is, but there is hope. There's always hope. I don't care what your situation is. I don't care if you're a war vet sitting in a wheelchair with no legs right now. There is always hope. There is always a way to conquer your situation. Colette, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone out there that's watching around the world. I see we have a ton of viewers on YouTube. Thank you so much for the YouTube community. Thank you for everyone that's going to see this on the replay for watching. I think that there's some really helpful information here. We've run out of time, but next Thursday night at the same time, we'll do another live broadcast. Thank you, Colette. Thanks to everyone watching, and we'll see you next time.